In the last lessons, we discussed frequency and waveforms, and now we'll be talking about the range of human hearing, and also what happens above our range of hearing, which we call ultrasound, and what happens below our range of hearing, which we call infrasound. All of this relates also to the larger world of animals and machines that can produce and or hear ranges of frequencies beyond what we can hear. So the range of human hearing is about 20 hertz, 20 cycles per second, up to about 20,000 hertz or 20 kilohertz. So 1,000 times higher. And those are our perceptions of pitch. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the range that we can hear, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what happens below and above that range. So again, the range of human hearing is 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, or thereabouts. We refer to frequencies that fall above our range of hearing as ultrasound. You've probably heard that word before as a medical tool used for looking at prenatal babies. What's happening there is very, very high frequencies that are harmless, but we can't hear them. What's happening is the computer is looking at a visual picture by using very, very high frequencies and how fast they come back to the machine. So it's also a word, just thinking of music and acoustics and sound, ultrasound, that means above our range of hearing. So it still exists, but we don't hear it. An example would be a dog whistle. If you've heard of a dog whistle, it's designed to make a very, very high whistling pitch that's too high for humans to hear, so you can theoretically blow it all day and won't even be noticed by any humans, but the dog can hear it, and so they can hear higher than humans a little bit, and so they would be able to hear that whistle and come. Other animals can hear more or less frequencies than humans, usually more, and in some cases way, way more. I found this little graphic that shows some ranges of hearing. Here's the audible range of human hearing here in this color. It goes from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. Below the range of human hearing is called infrasound. So we have ultrasound, which is very, very high and above our range of hearing, and below our hearing range called infrasound. You'll also hear that as subsonic. Sometimes it's called subsonic. So you can see that on this graph here. Here's the range of human hearing, and here is infrasound between 0 and 20 hertz, and up here, this whole range is ultrasound. But it's kind of fun to think about how the little box on a boat that finds fish sends out very, very high frequencies, very similar to an ultrasound machine, and gets a signal back, and those are pitches that we can't hear, but they help locate the fish. A bat, you've probably heard of echolocation, which is one of the ways that bats navigate flying very fast through a dark forest at night. They can hear extremely high frequencies. You can see this is going up to about 500,000 hertz. So that is way beyond 20,000. And so they can hear these very, very high frequencies and thus locate from them. Here's dolphins, which overlap with humans and also can hear very, very high. And then it shows medical instruments, like I mentioned, ultrasound machines around 1 megahertz, very, very, very high pitches. So along with what we can hear, it's important to think about what the machines that we use to listen and examine pitch can do. So microphones, for example, can pick up a similar range to human hearing, but they can pick up a little bit higher frequencies than we can hear, and they also don't always pick up as low as we can hear. So a microphone might not be able to hear and record 20 hertz, but it could probably record about 40 hertz. And speakers are similar, where speakers, like a medium-sized speaker, can go down to about maybe 40 or 60 hertz, unless you have a very large subwoofer, and that would be able to go down to about 20 or 30 hertz. So to explore a little bit about the range of our hearing, I've pulled up a program called Max MSP. Max MSP is an open-ended piece of software that lets you take objects like these numbers and toggle switches and sine waves and things like that and connect them together. You can see these lines, you can connect them together and make whatever you want. Today we're just going to be listening to a simple sine wave and sawtooth wave. The goal of this is not really to test exactly your personal range of hearing, but more for us to get a sense for what different frequency ranges sound like and whether we can perceive those differences. So please be advised that very high frequencies can be grating to the ears. What I'd suggest that you do is keep your hand on your volume control and turn down as needed, or mute if it feels uncomfortable. I already have turned down the volume for this video, so it's coming in at 1/10 the volume and 1/20 the volume, and then I have a volume knob over here. So I'm trying to keep it low enough that it doesn't hurt, but you can still hear it. So just as we start this off, start with your volume low and turn up or down as needed. Down here you can see we have a DAC, which is our digital to audio converter that functions as our output. So I'll start by turning on the audio by activating the DAC. And then what I'm going to do is start moving up this number box that will ramp up the frequency of the sine wave. So first we're just going to start with this sine wave, and we're going to hear what it sounds like as it comes into our audible frequency range and goes up. These low frequencies are absolutely audible for humans, but your speakers or headphones may or may not be able to produce them. Getting up to here, we're in the low and mid bass range. As we move up from 100 to about 300 and 400 hertz, we're starting to hear the mid-range of the piano and A440, which is what we tune instruments to. As I continue to go up higher, we'd be moving up the range into the mid-highs. As we get up above 1,000 and 2,000 hertz, we're getting close to the last octave of the piano. Moving up to around 4,000 hertz, we're at the top notes of the piano. Please turn down your speakers as needed. And as I continue to go up, we get into whistle tones and very high tones. Notice it can be difficult to make distinctions between the pitches up here. We get to about 10,000 hertz. Very, very high. Even though that's mathematically halfway between 1 hertz and 20,000. It is because of the way we understand pitch as being logarithmic or exponential. This is the last octave that we can hear. From here to 20,000 is about just the very end of our hearing range. So some people can hear beyond 20,000 hertz. Many of us hear only up to about 15,000 or 16,000. That's not really a bad thing. It's really not that much that we're missing way up there. Part of my goal for this was for you to hear how the different ranges of frequency, let's say from 20 to 100 and from 10,000 to 20,000, the ranges have a really different effect on us and sound really different. From about 20 to 100 hertz is the entire range of the bass instruments, the lowest couple octaves of the piano or a few octaves of the piano. The mid-range from, let's say, 100 hertz to 800 hertz is like the middle range of the piano, and the high range of the piano, maybe 800 hertz to 4,000. Beyond 4,000, think about there's no instrument in the orchestra, with a couple very rare exceptions, that can really play beyond that. So we have this whole range of frequency from about, let's say, 5,000 to 20,000 that is really just whistle tones and is mostly responsible for subtle distinctions in timbre, which we'll be getting into more soon. Now thinking separately about the low range, I'm going to use instead here this sawtooth wave on the side. The sawtooth wave is a buzzier sound than the pure sine wave. We'll be talking more about why it's buzzy later when we get into harmonics. It both looks in waveform and sounds kind of like a saw. I've divided this one by 20 in volume, so it should be quiet. It's a very intense sound, but I want to try to hear what happens when we go to the low range. So we know that our hearing ranges supposedly bottoms out at 20 hertz. So what happens below that? I'm going to start by turning this up to, let's say, 50 hertz, and then I'm going to roll down close to 0. What we'll hear is that in the case of our low hearing range, instead of disappearing into the ether like the high frequencies, as we get lower and lower, instead what happens is the sound pivots from being what we perceive as a pitch at around 20 hertz into what we perceive as a rhythm. So the cycles of this sawtooth wave, you can imagine them going by starting here at 60. There's 60 of them happening per second. As we go down to 20, there's only 20 of them happening per second, and we hear that as a very, very low pitch. As I go down all the way to 1 hertz, we will only hear 1 click per second. So that means that we will still hear it, but instead it will sound like a metronome going at 60 BPM. Here's a little play around with our low range of hearing. So you may notice that hearing 1 hertz, since it's 1 beat per second, does sound like a metronome at 60 beats per minute. 2 hertz sounds like 120 beats per minute, and 8 hertz sounds like 16th notes at that tempo. So we hear ta 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 ta. Those are the clicks of the cycle of the sawtooth going by. I hope you enjoyed exploring the range of human hearing and what lies beyond and below. Even though we can't hear above our range of hearing, other animals can, and there's been some concern about, for example, our pets hearing very high frequencies that are emitted by all of our devices that we can't hear. Whereas on the low side, we might completely go without noticing at all a very low frequency. And on the other hand, we might notice it as a rhythm or as a kind of rumbling or pulsing. Next time we'll be getting into recording and audio. I'll see you there.